Hello everyone, Asaf here for aetutsplus.com and welcome to part 2 of this Serpentine tutorial. In this part we'll go through some creative ways of using Serpentine. Let's start with some options using all those controls that weren't covered in the first part of the tutorial. So I'll start right away with opening a new composition. I'll use the 720p comp with at 24 frames per second. Let's hit OK, and let's start with creating an interesting path here. Make it 100 by 100, and let's bring up the position keyframe, make first keyframe moving time a bit, and make the second keyframe. Let's make it 3D and add a camera already. I'll use the 35mm preset for now, and let's try to create some interesting Bezier curves, you know, just to make it interesting and dynamic. Okay, let's add a new solid, call this one Serpentine, make it comp size, hit OK, and let's add Serpentine. Okay, so we're almost ready with this serpent. Let's just extrude the path. We don't need to see the solid, and there we go. We got a pretty cool, interesting noodle happening here. Let's turn on both show past start and show past end, and as you can see, it's now traveling along the path. Nice. Okay, so we got these head end cap and tail end cap features or options. What do we have here? First of all, we can change the look of the head or the tail. So this is the flat look, and we can choose this beveled kind of look and the pointed, rounded one, and you can experiment with those. You can also make them kind of more stand out, more like this, or you can even just animate these to go from flat to something that is beveled or kind of rounded like this one. Another thing you can do is you can offset, let me make some room here, there we go. You can offset the head or the tail, and this is pretty cool because if you think about it, it presents some interesting things you can do. Like you can animate this to look like the serpent is perhaps chasing its head, or it's chasing its tail, and at some point it catches it, and you know, obviously some interesting images could be mapped onto the head and onto the body of the serpent and so on. Or you can just punch it out literally at some point, just like I did here in this preview. Boom, there we go. Boom, gotta love that. So that's some things you can do with the head end cap and with the tail end cap. I'll just stick to flat at this point, and let's just reset this. Okay, so at any point you can choose to either show all the parts of the serpent, or just show the body without the head and tail, or you know, all the other options here. It's pretty obvious. These are nice. You can control the let's just show all again. You can control the specular brightness and sharpness, which kind of change the way the lighting affects the serpent. This is kind of the light coming from the serpent itself. Of course, Serpentine also reacts to After Effects lights, so you can add them and play with them. So you can really crank it up and, you know, create even kind of a hot spot So let's see what we have here in the color menu. So you can change the body color. Let's make it something, actually something more reddish, and you can also change the head color, right? And turn it to something like this. So this is pretty basic. You can change the tail color as well, and let's start adding some maps here. Let's add a color map. So let's create a new solid, and actually we're gonna pre-compose this, and we're gonna call this color map, but actually later on I'm gonna use this as a bump map as well to show you some stuff. So let's call it color and bump map. Okay, and let's lock this composition viewer and add a new comp viewer. Lock this one as well. Let's put them kind of side by side so we can see what we're doing and how it affects the serpent. We don't need to see the color and bump map here. So now let's just tell Serpentine that the body color map should be this layer. Okay, so now it's just white, nothing special here, right? But let's start with just creating a ramp here. So let's add a ramp. Perhaps, you know, we'll continue with the red vibe. Let's just make it kind of, you know, from brighter red to darker red, and perhaps we'll make it a radial kind of effect. And let's add some text. Let's write AE Tuts. That's super small. Let's scale it up a bit, and as you can see, this already is appearing on the serpent, but I wanna control it so that it looks nicely on this serpent. And this one is a rectangular serpent. So what I'm gonna do is just flip this AE Tuts, rotate it more accurately. Whoops, rotate it. Let's go here and do it like this. And now, okay, so now we got ourselves some text on the serpent, and I want to change this blue here, it just bugs me. Let's just pick this color here as well. So now as I animate the serpent, you can see that there's a color map with the text applied to it, which is kind of nice. And you can see how that already introduces some ideas about what you can do with this, but this is far from the end of it. Just watch. So let's adjust the X and Y tiling a bit. Let's say we want to have like the word AE Tuts happening on every facet of this rectangular serpent. So I believe and actually, yeah, this is nice too. So let's keep this Y tiling at 2, and let's turn this one to 4. Okay. Now I would perhaps scale this like this a little bit, even more, and move it closer to the center, and there we go. So in this way you can see that because all the changes on the map are dynamically reflected on the serpent, using this kind of way of working with 2 composition viewers is really effective. And this is another option that you should know, which is where is it? There we go. Lock map to path. Now you can read it, And basically what this means is that if it's locked as the serpent is traveling, the map stays only on the motion path. So when it's out of the motion path, you can sort of see what's happening here. The map gets cut when it's out of the motion path, and that could be effective, again, depending what you want to do. In most cases, I believe, like me, you find that unlocking it is more effective, but again, it depends on what you want to do. So that's another small feature here that you can use. And let's add a reflection map as well. So let's add another solid, hit OK. Let's pre-compose this one as well, call it reflection map, and OK. And let's see the reflection map here. Put it down. We don't need to see it in this composition. There we go. So now we need to tell Serpentine that we want to use this reflection map layer as the reflection map. So right now you see because it's entirely white, this is the kind of effect that it gives us on the serpent. And here's another tip that I'm going to share with you, which is using gradient overlay for this. I found is really effective. I'm right-clicking and going to Layer Styles and choosing Gradient Overlay. And let's just lock this comp viewer here. Actually, we have two. Let's just keep one. And the reason this is effective using Gradient Overlay is we have these controls here that make it very easy, like the scale, for instance, that make it very easy to control this reflection map and do all kinds of things with it. Let's edit the gradient, and we can see as if we add more colors here, let's add another black here, we can see these changes immediately here on the map, and then as we hit OK, we see them happening here on the serpent as well. So we can create some nice reflections. Perhaps actually let's make this kind of bluish, or with a hint of blue, something like this. Okay, and perhaps let's increase it. Okay, so this is one idea for a reflection map. You can do obviously a lot more with this, and soon I'll show you some more examples. So this is reflection map, and again, the really powerful thing is that all the changes are reflected dynamically on the serpent, which means that you can start animating both the reflection map and your color map and your bump map, and this will create some animations happening on the serpent, as the serpent itself could be moving. And here is another thing you can do with this. Let's go to this color and bump map again. Let's look at it. Let's actually tell Serpentine to use the color bump map as a bump map as well. So now you can already see how there are bumps, that the text is kind of bumped, and you can also control the bump height here. So now it's more pronounced, if that's the kind of thing you want to create. And what if we go here and we turn off this this ramp? Now, as you can see, this basically creates an interesting way of using Serpentine, because now this becomes as you can see, a motion typography technique, because you have a motion path and you have all this text that is moving with it, and you can obviously play with it a lot. As you can see, you should really work with draft width switch to really have some fluent motion happening here. I'd like to actually just show the body of the serpent so we see just the text. So let's go right here, show parts. This option allows you to do that. Let's just look at the body for now. And I'm on the draft, I have the draft switch on, I'm reminding you, so this is why it looks a little pixelated, but this is just to get things moving. So now you have this cool way of using Serpentine as a motion typography animation technique. And of course you can scale the text, or fade it on or fade it off, or do all kinds of things with it, and it will be updated dynamically on the serpent. So you can set some keyframes on the map and see it happening on the serpent as well. You can also play with let's bring back this solid here. Okay, you can also play with the animating the scaling of the map like this. So when I'm doing this, now we have these gaps between the parts of the serpent, and for instance you can do an animation where the serpent looks like it's dividing itself as it's moving, or it's building itself, like for instance in this example. Here's how this would look like. As you can see, the serpent is as if building itself or dividing itself. And again, this is created by animating the scaling of the map. So this is another thing you can do, and you can totally get creative with it and see how you want to use it. Another way to use the transparency idea is to, say, punch holes in the serpent. Like in this example, I used transparency to, I made the text transparent to punch holes in the serpent. And basically what I did here is, again, as you can see, these are holes in the serpent, and I came in there with the camera as it was moving, so it also acts as a tunnel, also like I did in the preview. And I also animated the camera so it kind of goes into the serpent and also moves faster at some point. So basically the idea is that these color and bump maps and reflection maps are all animatable and dynamically updated on the serpent, so you can really have fun with it. There we go. Now we have parts, two parts of the serpent. You can also use a video as a map, again, like I did here. This is essentially a video on the head of the serpent, so you can try to use that. Here's another example that I'll show you. This one is using particles and some fractal noise, and also like a sweeping kind of effect on the color map. And by the way, all these examples, they're all included in the project files, so if you want, you can kind of play with them, use them, customize them, do whatever you want with them. So here's another feature I want to show you here, and this is called the shadow catcher in Serpentine. And basically, as you can see from here, again, let's look at this. There's a shadow created by the serpent on this 3D plane. There's actually two shadows, even from two different angles, and also the serpent is intersecting with the 3D plane, although it's on a completely different layer. And this is really actually a very useful thing that also comes with Serpentine. The way it works is that on Serpentine here you have this shadow catcher plane option, and basically you select any 3D layer. It can also be text. So you select a 3D layer. Here you can select the shadow quality, and while we're at it, I'll actually mention that shadow quality here isn't that great. Even if you really crank it to 4000 here, it won't give you a really, you know, kind of soft shadow and so on. It's not, looks like it's not really meant for that. But if you're working on something that doesn't require that level of detail in the shadow, it'll definitely do the job. So the way it works is that you choose a 3D layer, but you also have to have at least one parallel light that is working in the scene. And then with a parallel light and a 3D plane, you tell Serpentine that what is the 3D layer you want to use as the shadow catcher. And now you can also control the intensity and the shadow darkness here. And if you want to, you can use it just for the sake of having this layer intersecting with the serpent. And this is quite important to understand, because it isn't that obvious that another layer will intersect with Serpentine, as you can see here, because without this option selected, if we cancel it and we say none, whatever we do now, whatever you do, they will never meet. The serpent will never meet with that 3D layer, and in case that's what you want to do, you'll never be able to do it without using the shadow catcher plane, because these are basically rendered on two different worlds. The best you can do is put them, just change the order and have the plane in front of the serpent or the other way around. But this option, even if you don't want to use the shadows, also allows you this nice intersecting feature. And what I did here was also kind of animating the camera. As you can see, I also added two different light sources here, and so from a certain point, when it reaches a certain angle, you actually get two types of shadows in two angles coming from two different light sources, and so on. So this is shadow catcher. Another way of using Serpentine is to simply use it as a 3D text generator, and this is done simply by shortening the length, meaning using a text layer and creating a serpent from that, and then just shortening that length to around 3 or 4 or 5 depending on what you want. And now you can just keep it like that and use it as 3D text, which is really nice to have. But not only it's a 3D text, in this case you can also fly the text easily using a motion path, and you can also fly the text using these path offsets right here. You can just keyframe this path offset on the X or on the Y or the Z. There are also path rotations, but I actually don't recommend using them, maybe for just a few degrees, because at some point they tend to distort the extrusion, as you can perhaps see from here. So I recommend just using the offsets and the extrusion offset, the motion path that is, to control this 3D text. And also it could be any other object, any other 3D object, one that is an extruded shape can be used in this manner. So this is another way of using Serpentine. And the last thing I want to show you is that, as you can see here, I used many serpents here. There we go. This is one, and this is another two, right? And this is another one, and here you have a whole bunch of serpents. Every letter here essentially is basically a serpent, including that plus that is kind of twirling around the letters. And I did all of that using just one instance of Serpentine, because as you can see here in this example, Serpentine allows you to have up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 serpents on one instance of the plugin. And that is actually really cool. Now, if you use this feature of multiple serpents, you need to understand what this option, use globals, means. Basically, the first serpent that you create, let's say we just had one serpent here. That's it. So the first one that you create is also like the template for all the other serpents if you want them to look exactly the same. Say you're creating a piece that requires 3 or 4 serpents that look exactly the same, and at the end they form some sort of a form. So you would leave this checkbox checked, and then you would choose another path, and it would look immediately the same way you designed the first serpent. And accordingly, these options will be grayed out. But if you want to design two completely different serpents, although they're on the same instance, they can be designed differently, which is really nice. So you just uncheck use globals, and then you can change here whatever you like, and basically create more looks than just one. What else did we didn't cover here? Rendering style. These rendering modes, basically just, experiment with them. This is the standard one, absolute one. There's a cartoon one with kind of cartoon shading, wireframe and hidden line. Wireframe, you can't really see it from that far, but if I come closer, there we go. Now you can see that it's actually like a wireframe rendering, hidden line as well. Just experiment with those and see which one you want to use depending on what look you're after. Probably the last tip I have to give you is to sometimes treat Serpentine like a 3D render, meaning usually in your projects you won't use solely Serpentine, and they won't be only based on Serpentine. Rather, you'll use Serpentine as an element along with many other elements, just like we're seeing here in this composition. And so I would say a tip would be, like I did here, is to render those serpents or just the Serpentine paths, and then you can treat it as a 3D render, and you can add all sorts of post-production effects to it, like I did here. As you can see, these glows that are happening, and there we go. Here we can see those glows while the serpent is in motion, and these anamorphic flares. I did those, by the way, with Magic Bullet Looks. There's a way to create anamorphic flares with the glow effect. You can find it on creativecow.net in case you're not familiar with it. I also used particles here, as you can see, and because again Serpentine renders in its own world and particles render in their own world, I actually used, in order to create the illusion that the serpents are flying in a world of particles, I used 2 layers of particles here. I just duplicated the layer and put one before Serpentine, one after, and just tweaked it a little, and this is how we get this this particle here, which is in front of the serpent, and this particle here, which we can see is behind the serpent. What else can we say about this? That's it, basically, I think. So this is my set of tips on using Serpentine. If you didn't watch the first part of the tutorial, make sure you watch it to see how to solve that the issue with the kinks. If you have a better idea of something that is even more automatic, perhaps you can come up with a script that can do it. I'd love to know. Leave a comment there. So hope you enjoyed, and all the best.